Hello, hello. There we go. Are you guys some kind of group? What? That's a group. What school? Anderson High School? Where, in what town? Gig Harbor. Okay. Have you guys been here before? Okay. So, just give you a very quick introduction to how glass blowing works. Everything that we do starts out in our glass furnaces. The glass furnaces are the ones with the square hole in the steel wall and doors closed. There's two of them, one on each side of this studio. Behind that door, there's a big ceramic tank, and in that ceramic tank is 1,000 pounds of molten glass. We keep the molten glass at 2,100 degrees, and at that temperature, the glass is like honey. So if you can imagine a giant crock pot full of honey, that's what the glass furnace is like. We want to get it out to make stuff. We take one of those steel pipes, those are called blowpipes, and we dip it into the molten glass like you dip one of those wooden honey dippers into a jar of honey. So we dip it in, twirl it around, a little bit of the molten glass sticks to the end of the pipe. The pipe itself is hollow, so when you blow, the ball of glass blows up like a balloon. If you want to make something larger, we dip it in, blow a little bubble, let it harden. Then we dip it in a second time, or a third time, or a fourth time. We just keep building up the glass in layers. All the glass that's in our furnaces is clear. You can see them dipping in right now. That's the molten glass on the end. All the glass in those furnaces is clear. It has no color. It's like this. The orange color that you're seeing is the glow from the heat. As that glass cools off, the orange glow will disappear, and you'll see the true color of the glass. When we want to make colored objects, we buy colored glass in various forms, and then we melt colored glass onto our clear glass. So if we're going to make an orange bowl, we blow a little bubble of clear glass, we cut off a chunk of orange, we warm it up, and then we melt a layer of orange over the clear glass. We'll then dip it in more clear glass. So what you end up with is something that looks colored, but if you cut through it, you would see it's just that one skinny layer of color. Now, in a big factory where you're going to make 1,000 things all the same color, then they just melt a big tank of colored glass and dip into it. But here, we're a bunch of artsy-fartsies, and we want to make a red thing, then a purple thing, then a blue thing. So we color each piece individually by melting on colored glass. So we buy this stuff like an artist buys paint. Red, blue, pink, purple. We melt on whatever color we want it to be. So they're about to do that over here. So the man sitting down, that's Ben. He's blown a bubble of clear glass. Nick, the man standing up, is heating up a chunk of the colored glass. And we're going to drop a big blob on and then mush it back till it entirely coats the original bubble. About a minute. If you think of it kind of like wax, when you get wax hot, it gets soft, but fairly quickly it starts to stiffen again. It's not quite that fast, but the dynamics are kind of the same. These are called Marini. We use them like little mosaic tiles to make a pattern. So we draw out rods that have the pattern. You can pass that around if you want to look at it. We make a big long rod that has the pattern going all the way through it, and then we chop off little sections, and we use them like little mosaic tiles. So we're going to take this pattern, we're going to stick it in the glory hole, the round furnace, get it hot, get it soft, give it a little squeeze so it all sticks together. We'll make a sheet with a pattern in it. Then we're going to roll it into a tube, close the end of the tube, and they'll have a bubble that has the mosaic pattern in it. So it's called Marini, and a single one is called Marina. Yeah, those are just random ones. We could assemble those into a pattern too. This is the way it looks when the pattern is prepared. You can make them with all sorts of designs. It's kind of like making sushi. A sushi roll, make a thing, and then you just chop it up, and each of the little pieces look the same, just like that. Do you guys have any questions? Other sections besides the Marini?
He asked me to make a color copy. So I think we're pulling Marine. My guess.
You know what color?
Green.
Thank you. So you can see Gabe heating up another bar of color. Yeah. Oh. So what they're making now is they're going to make one of these long rods with the pattern in it to chop up for Marini. So we're going to layer the different colors, make the pattern, pull the bar, stretch the bar out, and then we'll start chopping it up. Oh, when we have a little bit of leftover color, we make them into these ponies. So we just take the little leftover color, dip it in the clear glass, and make it into a little fun little thing. Touch it. Go ahead. I'm gonna. Yeah, it'd break if you dropped it, but you don't have to be afraid to touch it. How do you make the little details? We have, let's see, well, yeah. Can we play the pony video? So if you look up on the big screen, you'll see a little video. You'll see how we make one of these. So in this center, Gabe just dipped the rod of colored glass in some clear glass. So we have a thin coating of clear around the color. We'll save that little blob and eventually that'll go back in the furnace. That tray, that metal tray, is full of crushed colored glass. So they're going to melt on a layer of white. The crushed colored glass is called frit, F-R-I-T. Just colored glass that's been crushed up. So when we roll the frit on to get a colored layer, we usually have to do it several times to get the thing to be coated completely and solidly. Each one of these is one of those. You just saw how they did it. They roll it in the white frit. So they coated it clear, and they coated it, melted a layer of green over it, then they rolled it in the white frit. And so you get clear, green, and then white. What?
So it didn't stick here because it wasn't as hot when they rolled it as it was
It's sticking. I don't know what you mean.
Well, I thought if they rolled it, the whole thing would be coated with white.
Well, we used the cross section.
Oh, right.
Kind of like making a sushi roll. So we wrap the thing around it, but when you chop it, you only see. Yep. We're going to put them in our oven to cool off slowly overnight. Then when they're cool, we'll chop them up and make them into the individual tiles. But we have these are already chopped up, lined up in a pattern. These are ready to go. So these we'll use to make actual vases. Can we put up the Marini on a collar drawing? So if you look up on the big screen, you'll see a diagram how we pick it up. So we coat the end of one of those pipes with a little ring of glass. We heat up the sheet, and then we roll it up. And then we have a bubble with whatever pattern we want. So basically, we're turning a flat pattern into a three-dimensional object. Do you guys have any questions back there? Yeah. Yes. So, yeah. We get burned like you might if you worked in a restaurant kitchen. So, little annoying things, but not go to the doctor things. We take interns, but we don't have like an ongoing formal program. So we take a lot of kids from the local high school glassblowing program in Tacoma. They come for a month or two during the summer. It's not a formal program. Oh yeah, they have it's called the Hilltop Artist Program. They have one glass shop in Jason Lee Middle School and in Wilson High School. When he drips off the glass like that, you can see how fluid the molten glass really is. It really is just like honey. We save our clear waste, and we'll bust that up and then throw it back in the furnace and melt it again. Yeah, we can reuse the clear glass. We don't really have a practical way to reuse the colored glass because our big tanks are all full of clear, so we can't throw little bits of red and purple and blue in there. So the next thing these guys are going to do is called stuffing a color cup. So here's my color cup. So we're going to take Ben, the man on the right, camo shorts. He just blew what looks like a little bowl. We're going to keep it warm in that oven over there. And then we're going to take Gabe's piece and we're going to stuff it inside. So we'll get a layer of color on the outside with Gabe's pattern on the inside. Keeping them warm. That silver oven with the curved side is called the garage. We call it the garage because that's where we park stuff until we're ready to use it. It operates about half the temperature of the furnaces, so it's hot enough to keep the glass from breaking, but it's not so hot that it makes it soft. So whatever goes in there stays warm, retains its shape. When we're ready to use it, we'll pull it out, heat it up a little extra, and stick the things together. It's right here, right in front of me. So he's folding his thing over, and that's what's going to form they do get hot, but not nearly as hot as common sense would lead you to believe. The reason is physics. The rods are really long. They have a great deal of surface area compared to their mass, so they radiate the heat very efficiently. Also, once you coat the end with glass, glass is an insulating material, and they're shielded somewhat from the direct heat of the furnace. Now, they do get warm and sometimes uncomfortably so, but not nearly as hot as you would imagine.
So this would be like the white here, and then inside is going to be a really light green. On the outside, if the stuff is like funky this way, that's going to make it dark green. So I'm thinking about cross section. It's kind of, it's not going to look exact like this. There's actually only going to be 4 different fields.
Okay, you guys? Then we stretch it out, and it'll have the little sections. Nope, just making a Marini rod. Later on, we'll cut them up. Well, tomorrow. No, no. We have a little gadget with a hardened steel edge, and it's like a little press. You stick the rod in there and chop, 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 chop.
Oh yeah, this is it.
So he's going to round that out. We'll dip some more glass over that, and then we'll stuff it in the cup. Now, the cup that he made is a light green. But of course, you won't see that till it cools off. You guys have any questions? He's making Marini. He's making a long rod that's going to have a pattern going through it. I'm going to chop it up and use it to lay out a pattern like that, and we'll end up making vases like on the other table. You have a thing that looks like a big shovel. We stick it into the big round furnace, heat it up till it's soft, and just give it a little squeeze. that same thing. We lay out a pattern on a ceramic plate, just like a bead. We roll it up. We have a strike bubble. Take two bubbles. One we twist to the right. One we twist to the left. Then we blow one inside the other and make a little crystal. Can we put up the Reticello all-in-one drawing? So if you look up on the big screen, so we make two bubbles, one twisted to the right, one twisted to the left, blow one inside the other, all the little lines crisscross, and we get the pattern you see in the corner. This is classical Venetian style glass blowing. So Ben in the center in dark blue shirt. I guess they both got dark blue shirts. No hat. He's got the cup, the color cup. What? Hotter. So Gabe is going to cool his pipe off a little bit. We lay it in that steel trough. Just spray a little water on it. Cools it down. Makes it easier to hold. So we're getting ready to stuff it. We place the color cup on the stand. Gabe takes his pattern piece, drops it inside, squishes it. So we're going to fold down that little edge that's sticking out. So now we have all the layers and all the patterning. We'll square that away and then we'll stretch it and have our Marini rod. edge that was sticking out. So they took the torch, focused it on that edge, softened it, and tucked it in. So you notice that one of the glass blowers is up on the ramp. We're going to hand him the pipe, and we're going to pull it, stretch it vertically. So when Gabe's stretch that to the proper diameter, and then we'll bust that one up into smaller sections, and we'll put it in our annealing oven where it will be cooled slowly overnight to relieve any stress. You'll see him do it right now. One of the other glass blowers has a Kevlar glove. Yeah, it's a yeah.
So there you can see the pattern.
I see.
Cut that into little tiles. Pattern that's going to go. That's what we use in the process. Cut it into little tiles.
The glass is a very bad conductor of heat, so the outside cools quickly, the inside stays hot. The outside shrinks, and it pulls on the inside with enough force to actually break it. So we'll go into our annealing oven, the big black oven. Each day we heat that oven up to 920 degrees. We place all the objects we make during the day in there, and then at night we cool everything down all at once.
No, I'll make the combo parts for this. Gonna overlay that 21 and make it into 2 combo parts.
So if you look at this vase over here, this one, you see we got two plain sections and then the one with the section with the pattern. So the next thing they're going to do is blow a bubble and cut it in half. So we'll have two sections. And then later on we'll join all the sections together to make the vase. So we'll have we're making the plain transparent section, and then we're going to cut up into two pieces, keep them warm, and later on we'll attach them to the pattern part. Three sections, two the transparent yellow green, and then the blue green. What? Well, I mean, it differs from person to person. There's no formal system. It's not like being a doctor or a lawyer, where 2 years of this, 2 years of that. Much more like owning an industry. I would say, just to give you a ballpark, I'd say after a year you're functional. After 5 years you think you're good. And after 10 years you really are good. These guys, plane drawing. When we make things that have little line details, take the torch and melt down and draw with it. Get a 50-pound bag. Use a white bag, some fertilizer. What you fill with this stuff is glass. Stuff it into the furnace, cook it overnight. Melt it on bars and get the glass. Glass blower got it here. I do enamel it on glass now. Little bit, but it's not a business like that. You think you would like that job for a long while. The purpose of the shop is you guys get better machines. Don't go to the mall. We sell some of the things that we make here, but think of it as like a factory. It'd be a really terrible business. A lot of things you make are so labor intensive and so fancy, you couldn't make any money.
This one has two different color greens in it. This one is just one color. It's just white and a turquoise color kind of on two really layers that are really close to each other. How long does it take you guys to make a piece?
Depends what we're making. Some things are 15 minutes, some things are 6 hours. Think about an hour and a half. Well, it's probably an hour and a half of the actual blowing and probably another hour and a half of preparation.
Do you use different types of glass in your? I mean, is it? I don't know.
We have one base glass, and then we buy colored glass from another company. Got it. Not really. We have periodically, once a month, we have a little try it thing where somebody walks in and makes a lot. We don't have a real class. We do some commissions. So for those of you who just came in, the people you see working on the floor are our Museum of Glass Hot Shop team. They're our resident team of glass blowers. They're super skilled. And we're going to be making some vases similar to the ones you see here. They're going to be in different colors. But it's going to have 3 sections, 2 of them of a transparent color but plain, and then 1 fancy section in the middle. So the bubble that Gabe, the man sitting down, is blowing is going to be the transparent sections. We're going to blow one transparent bubble, cut it into two sections. We'll keep it warm. We'll make the center section, then we'll stick all the things together. So when we dip our pipes into the big tank of molten glass, only a certain amount sticks. So if we're going to make something larger, we blow a bubble, we let it harden a little bit, and then we dip it in again. So we have to dip this in several times to get all the glass we need to make our bubble. So right now, Gabe is going to the glass furnace. Behind that door, there's a big ceramic tank, and in that ceramic tank is 1,000 pounds of clear molten glass. He dips it in, coats it. The orange color that you're seeing is the glow from the heat. That's a kind of a yellow-green, the original bubble. But we just coated it with a layer of clear glass. Does anybody have any questions? What? Oh, little burns like you get in working in a restaurant kitchen. We don't trip the glass on ourselves, no. Yes. We wear gloves sometimes when things get really big and hot. We'll put a glove on. At this point, it doesn't really need it. It's made out of wood. It's called the block, B-L-O-C-K. They're stored in a bucket of water. As long as the wood itself is wet, the tool doesn't burn, nor does it leave any marks as he shapes the glass. So right now, we use that tool just to make the thing nice and round and even. So Gabe has now switched to the newspaper. That gray pad in his hand is just folded up newspaper soaked in water, ordinary newspaper. The man crouched down to the left, he's the guy that's blowing. So he blows through the steel tube and inflates the glass as Gabe shapes it. Gabe is the man in the black hat. So now Gabe is squeezing the glass. He's making a notch in it. We're going to use this bubble to make the two sections. So we're going to cut those things into two separate sections. So he squeezes it, makes the notch in the middle, and we'll break it apart, and then we'll have two sections of this transparent colored glass. As Gabe shapes it, his assistant is holding a wooden paddle in front of his arm to shield him from the heat. So now we're going to switch one half of this bubble onto another rod. Ben, tall guy in the camo shorts, is preparing the second steel rod, and that's called the punty, P-U-N-T-Y. We're going to use it as a temporary handle to hold the glass while we shape the other end. Does anybody have any questions? We recycle our clear waste. We don't have a good way of recycling our colored waste. So we stick the punty onto the bottom. When they feel that bond is strong enough, they'll break that in half. They'll break that bubble in half. So now we have two sections. One we can use to make the top of the vase, one we can use to make the bottom. heat up the two edges and press them together. So Ben and Gabe are shaping up their individual sections. When they've got them to the shape that they want, we're going to put them in here. This is called the garage. We call it the garage because that's where we park stuff until we're ready to use it. This oven operates about half the temperature of the furnaces. It's hot enough to keep the glass from breaking, but it's not so hot it makes it soft. So whatever goes in there stays warm, retains its shape. When we're ready to assemble it, we'll pull it out, heat it up a little extra, and then stick the parts together. When we make a vase that has several distinct hollow sections to it, it's called incalmo, I-N-C-A-L-M-O. Can we put up the assembling incalmo? Oh, there it is, right there. So look up on the big screen. So we'll assemble the sections, and then we'll blow it up to whatever size and shape we want. So you watch Nick over on the left. He's placing his section in the garage to stay warm. Now Gabe will place his section in there. Now we're going to make the center section. We've assembled a pattern like you see here. This is called Marini. We've made some long rods. Can we put up the Marini chop chop? So if you look up on the big screen, we make a long rod that has a pattern going all the way through it. We chop it up into little tiles, and then we assemble the tiles to make our mosaic pattern. So we have a pattern in the garage right now. We're going to take it out, heat it up, give it a little squeeze so all the little tiles stick together. Then we're going to roll it up and make a bubble out of it. Can we put up the Marini on a collar? So we're going to take our little we're going to take a pipe. We're going to make a little ring of glass around the end of the pipe, and we're going to use it to roll the pattern into a tube, close the end of the tube, and then we'll have a bubble with our Marini pattern. This technique dates back to the 1st, 2nd century AD. So they used to do these things in Roman times. It's pretty old. So over on the far right, Gabe is making what's called the collar. Can we put up the Marini pickup again? So if you look up on the big screen, he's putting a ring of glass around the end of that pipe. We call that the collar. In the center, Nick has our Marini pattern. We're going to heat that up and make it into a little pattern sheet. Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, it changes from time to time. They're all very capable glass blowers, but today Gabe is leading the team. So if you look at Gabe's pipe, you can see he's got that little ring. He's left the hole at the end of the pipe open so we can blow through it. So you're going to flip it around so it gets heated up evenly. The end that goes first into the glory hole, the round furnace, that usually gets a little bit hotter. So we flip it around so it'll be heated up evenly. Do you have any questions? So you want to make sure that all the little mosaic tiles, the Marini, are stuck together. So we heat it up to make it soft, and then we give them a little squeeze with those metal paddles. He's squeezing it. So we paint the release on that ceramic plate. We want to brush it off to make sure that none of that sticks to the glass and gets embedded. Now we'll bring the two edges of our pattern sheet together. She's given it a little bit of a squeeze with those metal tongs. Those are called the jacks. The oven that he's heating the glass up in is called the glory hole. It has no glass in there. It's just a big hot chamber. It runs on natural gas and forced air, and we keep it at approximately 2300 degrees. They're checking it out to make sure none of the release that we painted on the ceramic shelf is stuck to the glass. If they find some that's stuck there, they'll take a little Dremel tool and they'll just grind it off. Does anybody have any questions? Questions are free. Can we play Charging the Furnace? So now we're getting ready to plug up the hole in the end of the tube. We're going to drip a little molten glass onto the steel table. We call it a cookie. It's like make a little pad of molten glass, and we'll take our pattern tube and just stab it on the end. We'll trim off the little edges that stick out. Oh, I don't think we need to trim it then. So now that tube is closed, now we have a hollow space in there so we can actually blow it. If we blew before we closed it up, the air would just go out the end. So for those of you who came in a little later, we're making a vase that's similar to this. He's working on this section here, the pattern section. We've made 2 bubbles of transparent glass. They're sitting in that oven over there staying warm. We'll make the pattern section, then we'll add the 2 transparent sections. When we lay out the pattern on these shelves, we paint it with a release, and sometimes some of that powdered release sticks to the glass. So if it sticks to the glass, we take a little Dremel tool and just grind that little schmutz off. So, can we put up the assembling the Encalmo drawing? So, if you look up on the big screen, we have a little diagram. So, we're going to make the 3 sections. We're going to stick them together. So, that's the center section. We'll stick the bottom section on, then we'll switch it to another pipe, stick the top section on. When we join these hollow bubbles of different colors or different patterns, it's called Encalmo, I-N-C-A-L-M-O.
Trying to get all the divots out of there. You can't get them all out at once. You got to kind of work them out slow, or you can smooth it past pretty good.
To cool it, stiffen it. Yeah. So we're going to coat it once more with a little bit of molten glass. Right now, Gabe's letting it cool and stiffen a bit. We'll dip it in our furnace and coat it with another layer of clear molten glass. Each time we dip it in and coat it, it's called taking a gather, G-A-T-H-E-R. We drip the excess off into that steel can, and we'll save that excess glass, and eventually that'll go back in the furnace. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, sir. Yeah, they do get hot. Um, I mean, the tips get hot. The parts that touch the glass, the part they're holding doesn't get too hot. Nope. I mean, if you use it a lot and you forget that you've used it, you can grab a hot part. But go home and make your own.
No, I don't have it cooked up on.
Your microwave.
No. I was gonna say, I might try it.
I've seen videos on YouTube of people melting glass in their microwave.
Or in the oven.
No, in our microwave.
Microwave.
I don't know if they're fake or not.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
Never. No, do you, this is Gabe, is that his?
Yes, Gabe Feenan.
Will he put his initials or anything on the piece that he finished?
No, I think these will go. I don't know whether to sign these or not. I mean, right now he's working for the museum, so it'll say Museum of Glass. It's like when Tiffany made stuff. Tiffany never made any glass in his entire life. He designed glass, but the guys that actually made it were kind of anonymous.
There's not a maker's mark or anything.
Oh yeah, some of the things we have. We have a stamp. Nothing around here. Would they get signed Museum of Glass?
Yeah, I stopped signing. I never signed anything with my name.
Sometimes on like Coast Motor, they sign like Coast Motor BF.
That's essentially.
So these guys you see here working on the glass are our Museum of Glass hot shop team. This is their day job, but they're also very fine artists and make their own designs. Can we put up some of Gabe's work up on the big screen? The man in the black hat is Gabe Feenan. He shows his work at the Vetri Gallery, VETRI, in Seattle. And he also shows his work at Duncan McClellan in Florida. So these are Gabe's personal designs. So Gabe's going to open up the end of this bubble. We're getting ready to attach the two sections. So his bubble is with a pattern part. It's not the same pattern, but it's the pattern part. We'll attach another section here, and that'll be the bottom. Then we'll switch it to another rod and attach the top. Do you guys have any questions? It's called the pipe cooler. It's just to cool this metal pipe to make them easier to hold. Yeah, it doesn't get as hot as you would think, but they do sometimes become uncomfortable. When we do, just take them over there and spray water on them. So Ben, tall guy at the furnace without the hat, he's got our next section. We're going to join the two sections. When we join the two sections, it's called incalmo. It's a little bit tricky because once we touch those two sections together, they're stuck forever. So you got to get it. You have a one-shot deal. Also, you got to get them hot enough to stick to each other, but once they get hot and soft, they can go out around. So you got to keep it round, get the right diameter, one shot, and stick them together. It's a tricky operation. These guys are really good at it. They're making it look a lot easier than it actually is. The round one, the doors open. Those are only on during the working day. The glass furnaces, the ones with the tanks of molten glass in them, those are on 24/7.
Take too long to heat them up again.
Yep. You have the world's biggest ice cube in the morning. Yes. What do we do with the pieces that don't work out? Oh, we have a second sale. So the two sections are joined. Can we put up a picture of the wigwam burners? So if you look up there, this was they were called wigwam burners in a much less wigwam burners in a much less politically correct time. And so when the architect saw those, that's what gave him the idea to make the building in this shape. We put up a picture of the red cone. When they made the old ones, they would have the fire in the middle. And so it would be the heat would rise from that would draw air in from the side. This is really more symbolic. 1700s, they made the cone. The glass shops were made out of brick. They were big brick cones. And we have the furnace in the middle, and they have windows at the bottom on the side. So the air would come in through the side and go up and out the top.
What's the significance of exploring why does it need that?
No, I've tried to research that, and I have not been able to. So now Gabe is squeezing the glass and making a sharp notch in it. That sharp notch is a place where we'll be able to break the glass away from the metal pipe. The tool in his hand is called the jacks, and when we make that notch, it's called jacking it down. When we're ready to remove that glass from the metal pipe, we'll drip a little cold water into that notch. The water will crack the glass, and then a sharp tap on the metal pole will release it. Do you guys have any questions? Okay. So over on your right, Ben is laying out some sheets of wet newspaper on that plywood sheet. He's squeezing the water out. We're going to roll the glass on that to make the sides straight. We call it the newspaper marver. These steel tables are called the marvers. We roll the glass on there to shape it. When we do it on the wet newspaper, it's called the newspaper marver. M-A-R-V-E-R. When Gabe holds it down at an angle like that, the glass is soft and will actually, the bubble will stretch under its own weight. He's making that bubble longer. Yep, they have an average of 20 years experience. What? Sometimes. It's more of a educational thing than a business. So we're pressing a wooden paddle against the bottom to make the bottom flat. So the next part of this process will be to transfer our vase from the rod it's on now, the blowpipe, to a second steel rod called the punty. Over on the right, Ben is preparing the punty. We're going to stick that on the bottom. Then we'll break it away from the pipe it's on now. The punty will act as a temporary handle to hold the vase from the bottom while we shape the top. We're going to have to stick on another section, and then we'll open it up. So he's going to scratch a little circle on the base so he can see where the center is. So he just holds the sharp piece of glass against the bottom, and when you turn it, it scratches a little circle. You can see exactly where the center is. Once we heat that up again, the scratch circle will disappear. It's hard to see when you're looking at that flat bottom where exactly the center is. He's making a little notch in the punty so he has a place where he can break it off later. So Gabe is going to take a pair of tweezers, dip them in water, drip some water where he wants the glass to break, and then a sharp tap on the metal pole, and off it'll come. It is harder than it looks. So the next part of this process will be to open that opening wider and stick the final section on top. We made it earlier in this morning. It's sitting in this silver oven over here, staying warm. So Gabe's going to trim off a little bit of the glass at the front end. I think. Here he goes. When glass is hot, you can cut it with his scissors. Don't try that at home. So over on the far right, Nick has what's going to be the top section. You guys have any questions? So we're going to blow a little bit into the front end. The tool in Nick's hand is called the Soffietto. It's got a metal cone on the front end. We put the cone into the opening, and that makes a seal, and then we can blow through that central tube to inflate the glass after it's been removed from the original pipe. So the section we just added was a little narrower. We're puffing it out to make it a little wider. We're straightening out the front end, rolling it on the wet newspaper. When we roll it on the wet newspaper as opposed to the steel table, it straightens it out, but it doesn't leave any marks. Glass blowing here in the United States fell off in the 1940s and 1950s because of automation. And so in 1979, a number of Venetian masters started coming to the United States and teaching the young Americans. So the kind of glass blowing we're doing here is almost exactly what they do in Venice because we learned from Venetians. Every once in a while we have a Venetian master. His name is Nino Tagliafiedra. He's the greatest glass blower in the world. Just here, weeks ago, but he comes periodically. He comes probably 4 times a year or something. So we're almost done, and the reason I know that is I look to my right and I see one of the glass blowers put on some protective clothing. He's going to carry the finished piece to our annealing oven. Everything that we make here has to be cooled slowly or it will break. So each day we heat up our annealing oven to 920 degrees. We place all the objects that we make during the day in there. And at night we cool it, turn the temperature down very slowly and till it's cool at room temperature the next day. The thicker and the more complicated the object, the longer we'll take to cool it.
So, so he heats up the torch here, which you said is hotter than the inside, but then other times then they go right back into the.
The torch is allowed to focus the heat in a particular place.
Okay.
And when you heat up some with the torch, then you go back to the glory hole, the part that you torched is still hotter, stays hotter. So let's have a hand for the Museum of Glass Hot Shop team. Gabe Feenan, Ben Cobb, Nick Davis, and Vanessa. coming in, guys. Top to bottom. So the next thing we're going to be doing is called pulling cane. We're going to make rods of colored glass that we're going to melt into other pieces of glass to make stripes. So we're making rods like this, and each rod will eventually become a stripe in a vase like this. So instead of making each one individually, we make one that's like 40 feet long, and then we cut it up into these pencil-sized sections. So these are called cane. Oh, no. There you go. So we're going to take a piece of colored glass, in this case black. We're going to dip it in clear glass. So we'll have a big thick rod with black in the middle and clear around it. And then we're going to stick it to another piece of glass and we're going to stretch it. And we'll make a long rod like 40 feet long. And then we're going to cut up these little sections and we'll melt those in to make the stripes. So instead of making each this is the size that we use them, but instead of making each one individually, we make a big long one and chop it up. So this is called pulling cane. So if you look at Nick in the center, he just pulled out the bar of black glass. We're going to heat it up. The oven that he's heating the glass up in is called the glory hole. It runs on natural gas and forced air, and we keep it around 2,300 degrees. You guys have any questions? That's called a garage, and it's a warming oven. We make things that have several parts. We make part number one, stick it in there, keep it warm. Make part number two, then we pull part number one out and stick the two together. So it operates about half the temperature of the furnaces. Can we put up the Reticello all in one? So if you look up on the big screen, we blow two bubbles, one with the stripes twisted to the right, one with the stripes twisted to the left, and then we blow one inside the other, and all the little stripes cross, and then we get the pattern that you see there up in the corner. Thank you. A little bubble at each intersection. So we're getting ready to pull cane. Here comes Ben. We attach it to the post, the second steel rod. Start the stretching. And we're going to pull. So basically what we're doing here is making stripes. So if you look at Ben, you can see the glass right near his pipe is hot. As it gets cooler, as it goes towards the middle, that orange glow disappears, and you're seeing the true color of the glass. So when they feel they've stretched it as far as they need to, they'll stop, they'll hold it in the air for a minute, let it stiffen up a bit, and then when they feel it's firm enough to hold its own shape, then they'll rest it gently on the ladders to cool. We'll snap off the two ends. We'll cut that up into smaller sections, and those will become stripes in other pieces of glass. So these are called cane, and when we make this big long rod, it's called pulling cane. Do you guys have any questions? So what we're doing is called pulling cane. Basically, we're manufacturing stripes. Each one of these stripes that you see in that was once one of these. So what we do is we make a thick rod with the black going down the center and clear glass around it. We attach it to another pipe, and then we stretch it and make a skinny rod that's like 40 feet long. Then we chop it up into these little pencil-sized sections, and this is what we use to actually make the stripes.
So the glass in the
Furniture.
furnaces is always clear?
Yes.
And then you're adding colors outside.
We buy colored glass, and we form it separately.
Okay.
We don't put the color into the furnace.
What do you color glass with?
Now, things that color glass are mostly metals. Different metals give you different colors. If you cook it up with cobalt, you get blue, chromium green, a little bit of gold pink, a lot of gold, a beautiful ruby red. But you have to do that when you cook the glass up from scratch. It's like making a chocolate cake. You get all the ingredients and you bake them together. What we do is we buy already colored glass and melt it onto our.
Where do they make it? The colors?
The colors, there's two companies in Germany that we use and one company in New Zealand.
So not a lot of places make colored glass.
No, not a lot, no. But the kind that we use. I mean, there's factories that make, brown bottles for.
Sure. No, I mean,
Beer.
but I mean art glass.
Yeah. There's basically three main companies that we use. So you're going to stretch that out and make one long skinny rod, maybe 40 feet long. And then we'll cut that up into the small pencil-sized sections.
How hot is the furnace?
2,300 degrees.
How do you start the process, to get the glass on the rod?
If you see, look straight ahead with a square hole in the steel wall and door closed. That's our glass furnace. If you look up on the big screen, you'll see a diagram. That's what it looks like behind that door. So behind the door is a big ceramic tank with 1,000 pounds of molten glass in it. We keep the molten glass at 2,100 degrees, and at that temperature, the glass is like honey. So if you can imagine a giant crock pot full of honey, that's what our glass furnace is like. We want to get it out to make stuff. We take one of these steel pipes, and we dip it into the molten glass like you dip one of those wooden honey dippers into a jar of honey. Dip it in, twirl it around. A little bit sticks to the end of the pipe. Pipe is hollow. When you blow, it blows up like a balloon. We can reuse our clear glass. We don't have a good way of recycling our colored glass because our big tank, when we melt it, is all clear. So we can't put a little bit of red or purple and blue in it. Throw it out. We've tried to figure out something to do with it, but we haven't had any luck. People won't even take it for free. it up and use the scraps to make mosaics or fusing or whatever. And they, they do it a week or two and then they break out.
So nothing consistent. So, we live up near Issaquah, and when I first moved here 27 years ago, there was this glass company in Woodinville that
Correct.
that ground up the glass and then used it. I don't know how they treated it, so it wasn't sharp, but they used it as paving.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
They used to be able to
Okay.
drive down various roads and you'd see a blue driveway or a green driveway, and it was all colored glass. But I don't remember what that was the leftovers from.
Probably from the Spectrum company. Spectrum is they used to make inexpensive sheet glass with stained glass windows.
Okay.
So they probably have scrap of all